Welcome to the April Michigan Co-op webinar. Today we have NorthPointe Christian School from Grand Rapids, Michigan on with us. And Bill Van Dyke, who's the director, is going to be sharing some information with us. And he's joined with Scott Hoffman and Abram. Scott is a teacher there, and Abram is one of the students who has graciously agreed to share his experience with us. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and turn it over to Bill.
So the question most people ask us when we meet for the first time is, why did you start a big picture program? And basically for me personally, I had the privilege of being principal of a preschool through eighth grade school, maybe 100 or 1,200 kids at that school. And every year I had eighth graders come to me and say, I hate school, I don't want to do it anymore. Why do I have to go? And I said, sorry, it's the state law, you got to go. So too bad. They ended up in high school and several of them got expelled within the first year. And it just seemed like there had to be a better way. After looking around, I found a big picture program, read about it, and thought that's exactly what these kids needed all along. And that is a program that allows them to get out into the real world. It's real world and interest-based is what big picture is basically. Real world, interest-based. And so if kids are out in the real world, they find out what they might want to do someday. If it's interest-based, they learn because they're interested in it. And those are two things educationally that just make a boatload of sense to me. So our kids at NorthPointe Christian go on internships every Monday and Wednesday, about 10 o'clock to 2 o'clock. On Tuesday, Thursday, and Friday, it's project-based learning based on their specific interests in different areas. And that's worked out exceptionally well. Scott is the lead teacher in the program and has done an amazing job of meeting kids where they're at. And I'll have him talk a little bit about what it means to be a teacher in a big picture program.
Yeah, so I'll introduce myself just by saying I've taught math now for coming on, I do part-time roles right out of college, and then full-time, it's I think in total about 10 years. And I've been here for about half that time. And when I taught math in a traditional setting, I enjoyed working with students, but it is a big surprise. Math wasn't actually the reason why I became an educator. It was in order to work with students. So going every day and working in a Christian school, a small Christian school, working 6 out of 7 hours, each one a different subject, I got pretty tired of making the main thing that I teach to with students just math. Because when a student walks in my classroom, one of my hopes is to get to know them at a deep level, figure out what motivates them, and help them as they kind of plot their pathway forward. And so I just didn't get as much time as I wanted doing that. So I went back to school to become a special educator because I thought that was the only context in which you could work with students more one-on-one. But I came to find out that NorthPointe Christian had a big picture learning program. Was able to join that program, and so I haven't looked back. Yeah, I think it's a really special opportunity. What was the prompt you gave me? I just lost myself.
Just what about teaching kids in big picture learning is unique and special? And you sort of did answer.
Yeah. So it's really unique to be able to teach math 3 days a week, and then 2 days a week really focus on what students are interested in, get them out, have them leave. There's some work done by one of the guys who started the Big Picture Learning Network on the benefits of getting students to leave a school building. So there's a lot of published material around how does leaving school benefit a student's education and future outlooks. So we really want students to leave, and internship is a great way to do that. I get to sit with students and have them create learning goals based on career technical education standards or any other professional standards we can find. And then they design these learning goals, talk to a mentor at an internship about pulling those off, and then they go do it. And I get to be a front seat and watching them complete all that.
So we're going to have Andrew talk in just a second. Go ahead.
I was going to say, how do you find those internships then? Like for all of the kids? How many kids do you have involved right now?
There's between 40 and 45 kids involved. And basically the procedure is that when a student comes in, this is a ninth grade through 12th grade program. So all 4 years of high school, the kids would be in it if they choose. They can join, and several kids have joined over the years. They can also leave, which is the benefit of having a school within a school. We're a micro school inside of a bigger high school. So the high school's got about 350 students. We've got 40 to 45 students, and our students benefit, the big picture students benefit from everything else the school has to offer, which is a huge plus for the program. But basically, kids, when they come into the program, we do ability assessment and interest inventories. Then they let us know what they're interested in, what they're excited about. And then they have to make a cold call to a company and say, I would like to go for a shadow day. Again, it's an adulting skill. I mean, we could call if we wanted to, but we want the kids to call. I had a kid pick up the phone, look at it, and say, what side do I talk into? They haven't really lived the adult life yet, where you have to pick up a phone and call somebody. They get a shadow day, and if the shadow day goes well, then Scott goes and talks to him, I go and talk to him, and we hope to get at least a 12-week internship. But that's basically the way the program goes in getting internships. And Scott's gotten a lot of companies, a lot of people to agree to an internship, so he can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. So, and I think especially because we're going to be talking to a lot of different types of schools, a lot of schools will be, if they offer internships, it'll be for a short amount of time. And then they have the students go find those internships, and they got to sign some agreement that they'll be out of school for this period of time for this internship program. And for us, we really got to be able to find a balance between, so some students might come in with really strong interest. They know exactly where they want to go and they can get that set up. But some students come in asking the question, what am I interested in? I don't know. And so they start out by saying, what do you have available? And so we have a baseline of internships, places that we know are going to reliably create good educational experiences. Some cool partnerships here with like a Frederick Meyer Gardens, which is what Abram's going to talk about here shortly. And then a few other places where if a student doesn't know, they can get real experiences and real mentorship. And hopefully that type of authentic learning will then help them make the next step of saying, okay, I think I want to try this. They express their interest and they go for it. So got some great internships this year with Grand Rapids Police Department, Grand Rapids Symphony, a technology company downtown Grand Rapids, with different automotive shops or shops that deal with food. And Abram is currently at a video production place. So why don't I let you talk for yourself? And I think you can just kick it off describing some of your internship experiences.
Okay, cool. So my first internship that I did was at Frederick Meyer Gardens. And it was kind of like, I didn't know where I wanted to go, and I heard Frederick Meyer was a good internship, so I went there. And it was a good experience. It highlighted a lot of what I could get out of internships in the future, which is really, they gave me really good work there. I felt like I was always doing something. And it was a promising internship to start with. So if you don't know what Frederick Meyer Gardens is, they show off art, and they also take care of gardening, which is what I was mainly doing there. And even though I'm not really interested in gardening or taking care of their gardens, I was learning a lot. I was getting a lot of physical work in, and I was able to kind of feel like I know what a job at that place would somewhat feel like, and I understand what their goal is and what they're trying to accomplish. And it really did show me what I could get out of future internships, which is nice. After that, I tried 2 schools. My second school that I tried was Roguewood Elementary School, which is a school in Rockford. That was a great internship. It was really good. I had a mentor. His name was Schlatt, Mr. Schlatt. He was an amazing mentor. I think that he was the ideal mentor. I think it's one of the best mentors that probably anyone's ever had. He always made sure that I was getting something out of it, and I always had work to do. He made sure that I was able to help him and also help myself. He let me work with the kids, and he kind of stepped outside of his own comfort zone to help me step outside of mine. He really wanted me to succeed, in learning more of what it was like to be in a teacher setting. He showed me a lot of what it was like behind the scenes, and I got to learn a lot from him, which was really nice. So after going to some of the schools, I got to learn more about teaching. It was cool, but I wanted to try more. So I'm going to Our Daily Bread, which is a video production company, and their goal is to spread the gospel to whoever they can. They want to share the word in a way that isn't just reading the Bible, because they know that a newcomer probably isn't going to want to pick up a Bible and start reading through it. So they try to show and teach as much as they can through different videos, whether it's like podcasts or documentaries. It's a really cool program, and they were kind enough to pick me up. Video production is very hard to, you can't get things wrong because you're on a very limited schedule. It's very stressful, so picking me up was a risk. So I appreciate that a lot, but I've gotten to learn so many new things from Our Daily Bread. I didn't really know what it looks like to do video production, or I thought it was something I might be interested in, but I couldn't even imagine what that would be like to work in that kind of setting. And so they've helped teach me what it is to work in that kind of setting, and they've shown me different aspects. They haven't kept me to one spot. They've moved me around a whole lot so I can get as much experience as possible, which has been greatly appreciated. And I've kind of picked up these internships, the schools and Our Daily Bread. I've done them because, one, I think they're really nice internships on a resume. I think they look really good. And two, the schooling was because teaching was always something that I've been interested in, but I didn't know what it like really looks like from a teacher's point of view. And I didn't know if I would enjoy working with the kids, or if that was something, I just didn't know a whole lot about it. And so I went to do the schooling, and it was great. I don't think it was for me. With Our Daily Bread, I'm a creative and I like to create things. And so it would be so cool if I could make my own movies. I think that'd be great. Short films specifically would be really cool. I didn't know how to start doing that or how to start creating, and it was very confusing and intimidating. And so when I was thinking of my internship, I was like, a video production company isn't something I think is possible, but if it's something I could do, it would be ideal. And so Scott helped me get Our Daily Bread, and I'm hoping that if I can't get successful off of making my own short films, then I can work in a video production company setting. It's a really nice work setting. And so, yeah, that's kind of what I've gotten out of my internships.
So when we think about kids' internships, we think about the fact that so many kids leave high school, head off to college with no idea what their gifts or talents or abilities are. They get a degree, and I have a friend working at Starbucks with a master's degree. Starbucks is a great job, but you don't need a master's degree for that. So from Abram, to be a teacher, he would have had to go to college for sure. To be a video producer, maybe not. Maybe a 12-year associate's degree or some on-job training. But companies that we've gone to, that Scott and I have gone to, have just been amazing at helping us get interns attached with mentors that are passionate about their jobs. And companies out there are desperate for employees, which is a really cool place for us to be, because they're willing to take interns, train them. Just an aside, a lot of people, maybe people listening, are going to say, well, if they're not 18, they really can't work at a place. But the federal government has passed a ruling down through the Labor Department saying, if a student is not taking money and not taking a job from somebody else, then they're not an employee. If they're not an employee, the OSHA laws don't apply. So we've had a kid roofing who was super capable to roof because that's what he was really good at. We've had kids at Frederick Meyer Gardens, and we've had kids running machinery. So there's no limit really to what kids can do out in the real world. As long, I dropped a kid off today that's going to weld. He's welding, putting a trailer together for one of the bosses there. So there are lots of opportunities out there, and the sky's the limit as far as what internships are possible. You're going to say something about internship?
I have a couple questions about the internship piece, but you just answered one. I was going to ask how students get there. So you provide transportation for them.
We do for students that are freshmen and sophomores, and we really encourage kids to get their driver's license so they can drive themselves when they're juniors and seniors.
Yeah, okay. So Abram, my question for you, I had two questions. So each of those internships that you, or maybe it's three questions. Each of those internships you have were they all each like 12 weeks long then? Or how do you determine the length of them?
Yeah, each one they go up until the end of the semester. So sometimes they can be shorter. Like our daily bread, I didn't get it until nearing the end of quarter 3. And so I'm only gonna get to be there for like 9 or 10 months or weeks. And so it depends whenever you get it until the end of that semester. Some kids will go and stay there until the end of the next semester. So that's how long you're there.
And we had one student that spent 3 years in the same spot.
Okay, I was wondering if that could
convinced him that
happen.
he should be more well-rounded, and he wasn't buying it, so he stayed.
Are you looking to stay there for the next semester then, or do you want to try something else?
Yeah, for my next internship, I think that it depends where this one ends, I guess. But I think that there will be a lot more that I can learn. Like I said, video production is a really big thing. It's daunting. And so there's so much to learn. And if I get the opportunity to go back, I probably will take it. So.
Okay, and then my third question for you then is, how do you relate what you're doing in your internship to your, you have your classes 3 days a week. How do they tie together?
Yeah, they're pretty separate. We do have an advisory class, which helps us manage for the first couple of years, helps us manage our internships and make sure we're getting what we want out of them. They help us like balance what we're getting out of them, what the internship's getting out of them, that kind of stuff. But apart from the advisory class, the schooling and internships don't intertwine that much.
Okay.
So that brings up an interesting point, and that is, if students are in the building only 3 days a week, how are they getting all the curriculum that they should get to graduate from high school? And the reason, going way back to the beginning, the reason NorthPointe Christian thought about doing big picture learning is because Todd Tulsma, the head of school here, said it's not enough to be a traditional school anymore. We've got to offer parents more than just tradition. And traditional education basically says we've got 25 kids in a classroom and we teach them all the same math, we teach them all the same history, we teach them all the same science, and we hope they get it. And at the end of the year, we hope they take a test and do really well in it, so we get a good report card from the state of Michigan. The reality in the real world is that students are not all created equal. There's kids with differing abilities, and the number one thing they need to know how to do is survive in the real world after they get out of high school or after they get out of college. So what Big Picture does on the 2 days that kids are out in internships, they're not teaching traditional science and math and English and history, but instead they're learning adulting skills. They're learning the skills they need to be successful when they get out of high school or get out of college. And, there's no state mandates that say you have to get kids ready for the real world, but that should be the number one mandate because that's where they're all heading. So it's philosophically, a question could be asked, do the kids learn as much math in Big Picture as they would in traditional school? And because Scott's the math teacher, I'm going to let him answer that one.
So we'll do more of a survey of what you might learn in our traditional math class. I will say, I want to be able to, I don't want a parent to come in and ask the question, will my student's future be impacted negatively for joining your program? I don't want that answer to ever be yes. And so we try to make sure that if it's a SAT test that they need to pass, or if they need to get whatever they need to be able to get admitted to the next step, college or otherwise, that we give them those tools. So I'll teach very specifically in math to the test in a lot of ways, which isn't fun, but that's because I don't want there to be any roadblocks. But that's not the point of our program. The point is to equip them to do what they want to be doing on the other side. Fortunately, math is the only thing on the SAT that you really need to be content specific with. It isn't just teaching skills, it's teaching what is a logarithm, and then they just got to know that. So in our non-math classes, we don't cover the range of curriculum. We have students go really deep through project-based learning, and they get a range of choices of what they want to learn. So if they're studying World War II, and the students ask, what do I want to learn about World War II? And then this project format allows them to, the thing that they share is that the process and the product of their work might be the same, but the content of it is going to be very different. So they might do a presentation, or they might be creating a video, but it's going to be about all different things related to World War II. So if we're kind of centering it on one thing, our program is centered on interest-based learning. Internships, they get to do that in a very, very unique way. Then in class, we get to do it in a way that has some constraints, but it's still very much interest-based.
And just for the record too, all of our kids get a diploma, just like any other kid at NorthPointe. And one of the things that I've done is said every kid has to apply to college. And all of our kids have applied to college so far, and all of them have been accepted, because I don't want any kid to ever say, I didn't go to college because I couldn't. They chose not to go to college. And then just a super quick story, one of our students who was basically sliding by with D's and D minuses in all of his classes, took the SAT in typical fashion. He forgot his graphing calculator. He took the math test, he took the whole SAT, and he scored highest in the school. A kid who afterward, when he left, said, I never would have made it without Big Picture. We accepted him for who he was, and the kid's brilliant. In a traditional setting, he would not have been accepted for who he was, and I don't know if he would have lasted. So it's just offering kids a different alternative to education.
So Bill, you've been doing this for 6 years, Big Picture. You've been there the whole time Big Picture started, right?
Yep.
So for the 6 years, what are some of the challenges that you had to overcome as you started the program, or even more recent challenges that might come up?
Yeah, the challenges right from the beginning have been what status quo, the idea that every parent that sends a kid to school went to school, and they went to school and they took classes, and every single one of them will say, I took this class and forgot everything. I took this test and forgot it the next day. But they somehow want their kids to experience the same thing because they're successful and they want their kids to be successful. And it's just sort of a confusing dichotomy of what are we really doing to kids? And instead of saying, we're going to do it the same old way, let's try it a different way. So the first challenge is convincing parents that doing education a different way is going to work. The second challenge is convincing the kids that being in a program that it's a school within a school, but it's separate from the other part. The kids aren't cohorts together. They get to know each other super well. Teachers get to know them super well, but the kids somehow, especially as freshmen, especially as freshman girls, feel that socially they might be missing out on something. So we have to help them process that social part of it. And maybe a freshman girl stays in the traditional program and moves in when she's a sophomore or a junior. We're way okay with that. It's just, we have to unteach kids a lot of stuff too, because they've been taught, listen to the teacher, you're going to get a test, put down exactly what the teacher said, and you'll get an A. And we want our kids instead to be problem solvers, and we want them to be creative. And even project-based learning is sort of a new concept. So it is good if we get kids right away as freshmen, because we can teach them those things.
Mm-hmm. So as a school within a school, then, are you in the same building as the rest of the high school? And how is that for logistics with like lunch and, I mean, busing's probably not the same because you probably still start at the same time, but you know, how they interact with other kids in the building besides just yours?
That's Scott's.
Yeah, I'll share this one with Abram. We have them start the school day all together in a shared class where it's not just BPL specific. And then they take a few electives, which we try to get them in the morning before students leave for internships on those internship days. So students have a few 5-day-a-week classes with all their peers in the whole school. Those classes are Bible, foreign language, and fine arts, because we just can't hire enough staff members to do all those things. So then they can leave for internships after those are done. What's your experience like? What's shared? What's
Yeah, you do have classes with the rest of the school, everybody doing traditional. But if you want to get to know those people, it's let up to the student a lot. You have to kind of reach out to those people and make an effort to get to know them, because there is a pretty big separation between the traditional school and big picture learning. And so that can look like sitting with strangers at lunch, or helping somebody out that can't do their work in Bible and that sort of thing. But it is left up to the student.
some students do it well because they really try to stay involved in extracurriculars, and some students are perfectly okay saying,
Mhm.
I'm going to make friends with people in the program and I'm not going to care. And we don't, I'm not going to push a student to go either way, but if students are scared of losing friends, we give them the encouragement of saying there's ways to keep them. You just got to stay involved. So
Which is a good life skill as well, because once you graduate and get jobs, you still have to, make an effort to stay in touch with your friends.
And I ask the kids too, how many of your parents are best friends with their ninth grade friend? And not too many of them are hanging out with their ninth grade friend anymore. So, but it's that is a challenge for us.
Yeah. So what are you had mentioned to me earlier before this call is that you are the only Christian school in the Big Picture Learning Network. So can you talk about the Big Picture Learning Network as a whole in general for districts who may be interested in looking at, possibly opening up a micro school as Big Picture Learning?
Yeah, Big Picture is an amazing organization, incredibly diverse. And most of the schools that Big Picture went into were failing schools. They didn't know what to do, inner city schools, failing schools, and they started the Big Picture program. Big Picture's been around for 30 years, so it's not a brand new idea. The Big Picture staff have been amazing. I mean, we pay to be part of the Big Picture network, we pay $1,000 a year, that's it. And they say, we're not going to tell you how to do it. We're going to say instead, it's got to be interest-based, it's got to be real world. But beyond that, you develop a program that fits your school. So it's not like a prescribed program at all. They allow you to be creative and innovative. And then they've got coaches that help out when you run into trouble and say, hey, try this or try that. So Scott and I have been to a bunch of the conventions already, and we're just super impressed with Big Picture as an organization. And it's been a program that's really made a difference. Being around for 30 years, there's people in the real world now that have made an incredible difference. And the program, it's not a question of will it work? It does work. You just have to have the mindset to take a risk and say, we're going to give this a shot.
mm-hmm. Yeah, I think we learn a lot from those schools, because oftentimes private schools can live in their own kind of bubbles. And so to be a part of those conventions is to say, okay, how do we learn from non-Christian school or non-private school educators? And the challenges that a lot of, especially big, like public school systems in big cities, like your New Yorks and your Los Angeleses, they're seeing kind of that, there's that idea that one of the biggest determinants of academic success is area code. It's not the school you go to, your zip code. So they see these kids growing up in these zip codes. There's just a lot of challenges, and Big Picture Learning has shown in those places that if you give kids exposure and mentorship outside of the school building, you will totally rework that statistic, and that those students will find incredible success through that model. So learning that from those schools who've had to go through it the hard way, like, we are just blessed to be a part of that network.
That's great. And so then do you have staff that are strictly like teachers that only teach in Big Picture Learning, or do you share staff between?
Most of there's 3 Big Picture teachers right now. Scott's one of them, obviously, and they're all basically full-time dedicated. They grabbed Scott to teach one traditional math class, but he made it more of a big picture class anyway. So it's in his blood.
That's great. Krista or Ann, do you have any questions for any of these guys?
Don't, but this is very intriguing and thank you very much for sharing it all with us. I would love to see this expand to many more schools and many different opportunities for our students to have. I did come in just a touch late because I was in another meeting. I'm wondering, what are you at a high school, or what's the age level of the students that are engaged in this program?
Yeah, good question. We are in a high school, but at the conventions that we were just talking about, there's a school in California called Smash, which is a crazy name for a school. But anyway, they do it starting in kindergarten. And I would love to see it in middle school also. I think middle school would be more career awareness, and rather than going out on internships. But there's a lot of schools that do it 8th grade through 12th grade. We happen to be doing it 9 through 12.
Yeah, anytime that you have kind of two thoughts, one is how do we leave school more and how do we get authentic educational experiences? If you push those to the end of where they could go, you'll end up with some formation of a big picture learning school. And no big picture learning schools look exactly alike. Like, we do it very differently than a lot of others, but we all kind of hold that same philosophy that, like, you leave in order to learn and you get authentic educational experiences.
Perfect. I always say, if you're doing it exactly like somebody else is doing it, you're doing it wrong.
I like that a lot. That's
You
good.
have to customize for your learners, or, really and truly, one size fits all does not really fit all.
And that's what we're pretty much shoved into a lot of times against our will.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, thank you very much.
You're welcome. If anybody wants to visit, listening now or later, we're happy to have visitors come by and check it out in person. That's not a problem at all.
Mm-hmm. Great. So, is there any, over those 6 years, what would be the most unique internship that a student had?
Wow. Want to answer that one?
Yeah, I guess I love this internship so much. The Happy Cat Cafe.
There you go.
Yeah. We have a mentor who started her own business called Happy Cat Cafe, modeled after these cafes she had seen in some countries she visited where there's cats in the cafe. And so you can go pet a cat while you have your coffee. And so she started this cafe and she got an intern, and turned out that she was like one of our greatest mentors, because she doesn't just teach the students how to pet cats and make coffee. She has them go through business creation plans, and she just pours into them and helps really stoke their their passions, and helps them bring out this entrepreneurship side of them. So Happy Cat Cafe has been unique but incredibly beneficial. That's a good one.
That is a really good one.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we've had some kids go really long term at Camp Roger up here, and so they do everything from working with students to maintenance to, it's just like a do everything internship. Super high ceiling of learning. They just want an intern to learn everything that they can. Yeah.
And the student I dropped off today, who's going to do some welding, it's really funny because the kid, he was involved in a woodworking internship also, and he had never really held a drill or a saw or anything. So, his dad's a missionary, and he just really hasn't ever known anything about tools or carpentry or anything. And now he's welding. And it's like, man, talk about learning a life skill that he never would have learned any other way. And he's loving it. And his mentor not only is teaching him how to weld, but then on the side, he's also teaching him how to be a business person and be a leader and all sorts of other, softer skills than welding. And that's been a huge blessing.
Yeah, that's great. It sounds like you have some really great mentors, because that's the thing that I was a career tech teacher, and trying to find those relationships with businesses that actually, it's not just busy work or they'd sit around. You really want them to be physically doing the work.
Right.
Yeah, so that's great.
And our teachers do a really good job of going out and making sure they're doing more than just sitting around. And Scott can maybe just talk about that process a second.
Yeah, no, I'm glad this is coming up. Because I thought this earlier that I wanted to bring it up, The learning that you do in an internship is very different than the learning you do in school because it's not laid out there for you. And so then the question is, how does a student get a rigorous education in an internship setting? A lot of that is left up to the student to develop a learning plan, but a mentor is willing to do a lot if there's reciprocity. So if a student comes in and says, I'm going to add value in order to get value out. And the beauty of that model is that when schools tell you you're going to be a lifelong learner if you graduate from our school, well, sometimes all that means is you're going to keep reading books and maybe doing math because we taught you how to read and do math. But a lot of times you just never really learn how do you be a lifelong learner in a work setting because it's hard. And I think what we hope to teach is that when a student goes into an internship, they won't be given anything, but they can get a lot if they're willing to be the type of person who, when they walk in, makes it a better place for having entered the room or the internship. I want Abram to talk briefly, if you're willing, about how it's different learning at an internship than in a classroom. You can do that.
When you're in a classroom learning, it's even with BPL, it's very traditional. You're learning what they want you to learn, the skills they think you need to have to go out and live, and that's great. When you're at an internship learning, you're not just learning whatever your internship wants you to learn. It's very much you get to learn what you want to learn, and that shows too with how much effort you put into it. Because if you don't really want to learn anything from your internship, you're not going to put that much effort, and you then won't learn anything. Because your interns, your mentors aren't there necessarily. I mean, they're there to teach you, but they're there to teach you what you want them to teach you. And they're there to give you work and that kind of stuff. So you have to be able to self-teach and observe and figure out how you're going to tackle a certain problem, and how much you want to gain experience and that kind of stuff. And it's very unique, and it's very self-reliant in a very good way. And yeah, it's so much different than learning in a classroom.
So one of the tools that we have to give them then is the ability to set goals. So we go through goal setting processes to make sure that they can achieve what they want to at an internship.
Have you had graduates come back and talk to you?
Mm-hmm.
What do
Definitely,
they say?
definitely. And just along with what Abram was just saying, we've had 3 kids that were not successful and got fired. 2 of them were at the same place. They went to lunch and they got out their cell phones and they never went back to work. The guy who owned it was a car repair place. The guy who owned the car repair place called me up and said, what am I supposed to do with these kids? And I said, what would you do if they were an employee? And he said, I'd fire them. I said, so fire them. And so I went to pick those kids up and they were like, we just got fired. And it's like, you think about that life skill learned as a 10th grader versus a 21-year-old. And the value added was incredible. And those guys since then have been much more responsible and respectful of the internships that they've gone to.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, this has been great. I have to go to Kalamazoo at the end of the month. So I think I might stop there on my way through. So I'll be in touch with you about that. But I really appreciate you sharing all this information with us, because I really, Marcia Barra, who was the person who used to run the Michigan Co-op, is it Elliot Washer?
Yeah.
That was a big person who's helped to start Big Picture Learning. She had been in touch with him, and he did a webinar for her long time ago, like late 2009 or something like that. So I've been wanting to learn more information about it, and I was really surprised that you were the only one in Michigan. So I'm really great to be able to connect with you.
No, appreciate the opportunity. And again, anybody that wants more information or wants to visit is welcome.
Okay, great. Thank you. I'll be in touch soon.
Good, thank you. Bye-bye.
Yep, bye-bye.